Hello, you are listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. My name is Danny Krastik, and you are listening to Movies Till Midnight. And we have a very, very special guest with us today, a guy that I've been wanting to talk to for, I kid you not, like over a decade at this point. I'm serious. This is like, wow, this is awesome. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself for everyone. But yeah, I'm very excited about tonight's interview.
Hi, I'm director Anthony C. Ferrante. You probably know me from the Sharknado franchise. I did all six of those movies, among other movies, including the horror film Boo, and recently Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch and Butch versus Sundance.
Yeah, well, it's funny you started with Boo because that I want to start from the beginning. So 2005 was when Boo came out, and on that film you worked with an actress named Dee Wallace, who has been in a ton of just of iconic horror films from the 70s. Was in E.T. She was the mom in E.T. Probably her most well-known film. So what was that experience like working with someone like her?
Well, even at that time, I kind of knew that for a first movie, you do need some kind of name in the movie, and I had known Dee through my journalism days, and I reached out to her trying to see if maybe she'd be interested in being in the film. And it was kind of touch and go because the producers were like, it's okay whether we have her or we don't have her. I mean, but I was really adamant that she needs to be in the film, and so we worked it out, and she gave me a gift of being in my first movie. Um, having had that journalism side of things, I was used to being around and interviewing celebrities, kind of like what you're doing. But so it wasn't like uh, you're not intimidated by it, except that here comes Dee Wallace first day on set, and for that, like, for about 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, all my favorite directors have directed her, and so it's like a hair moment of anxiety of like, oh wow, this is kind of crazy that she's on my set.
Yeah.
But she's so disarming on everything, and she just made it so easy, and it just after a few minutes, it just was like, yeah, I'm just working with her like I worked with everybody else.
Mhm.
Um, Boo was kind of the idea. I just wanted to make something really spooky and scary and ambient. And for a first movie, you want something that's kind of single location. And I wrote the script for this location. And because I was a special makeup effects supervisor on a film called, I think, Progeny, and we were there filming it as a functional hospital. And we had a lot of downtime, so we would explore the place, and it just was ripe for for a film like this. And so David Allen, the producer, was looking to do some low budget movies. I brought him down to that location in Los Angeles, said, "This is what I wrote this script for," because he liked the script. And then we went to lunch. He goes, "Let's make the movie." So it's a rare instance where you actually get to shoot the movie in the place that you actually wrote the movie for.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm happy you mentioned your journalism because I do want to talk about that. So you again, as you mentioned, you started off in journalism. What drove you to then get into making films yourself?
Uh, I wanted to make movies when I was in. I remember when I was in sixth grade that the moment that I wanted to make film. It was sort of the thing that came out of the ether. But coming from a small town in Northern California, um, there was no avenue or resources or access to things to be able to make movies. And it's not like Hollywood where you can throw a stone and find someone making a movie or someone that knows how to make movies. So instead, I started just writing movie reviews because it was a way to kind of learn about movies and watch a lot of films. And that led to somehow getting interviews, which was really bizarre because I'm surprised at how ballsy I was in reaching out to studios and stuff. And they were just like, okay, hey, we'll put you on a junket roundtable. And so I used it as a way to, to learn about films I probably wouldn't have originally watched. And then when I interviewed people, it was like a second film school for me. So by the time I was able to get access to camera and stuff and start making short films, I was kind of already on the way. So journalism kind of paid the bills and was a second film school because I went to San Francisco State for film eventually, and I also was in all the film classes at my community college. So it was kind of all in tandem. And then eventually I started working as a special makeup effects supervisor, second unit director on a bunch of horror movies, and then that led to Boo. So directing and writing was always the end result, but you needed a day job to kind of get to that finish line.
Hmm. Yeah, so you did journalism for a bit, you did a lot of other movies for a bit, and then 2013 hits, and suddenly sharks are swarming tornadoes up and down the West Coast. So how do you come up with a concept for a film like Sharknado? Like, what is the inspiration behind something like that?
It's very simple. At the time, Boo had aired on Sci-Fi and did really well. So I directed a couple of films for them, but I also was writing a bunch of stuff for them. And you basically come up with a bunch of concepts that and then the production company goes and pitches it to them. At the time, I was working with one of those companies. It was an Asylum, and I think I was known as the horror guy over there. So that when they had horror pitches, so I did a Leprechaun movie, a Banshee movie, some ghost stuff, and and a buddy of mine, Jacob Hare, who I'd written a script with, and he's over at Rick and Morty now as a director, and won an Emmy for some of his stuff, which is pretty awesome. Uh, I said, look, I got to come up with a bunch of pitches for sci-fi, and I've already got the horror pitches. Let's come up with two of the most ridiculous ideas possible, because I'd never pitched the ridiculous stuff to them. So I think we came up with lava birds, and he said Sharknado, and we just fell in love with that. And I think we pitched it twice to sci-fi, and nothing happened with it. And then I was writing a script for another company for sci-fi, which was this Leprechaun's Revenge movie, and I made a reference to Sharknado in there. And then someone at Sci-Fi goes, "We must make this movie." And so the sort of circle of things, I did my another film with Asylum called A Hansel Gretel, and I saw on their slate they were doing Sharknado, and I guess the Sci-Fi gave them that title. And I go, "Well, I want to make this movie." And Sci-Fi was like, "He's the horror guy. He doesn't know how to make Sharknadoes." So then after they went through, like, their list of 100 directors that didn't want to make the movie, the one person that did want to make the movie, they finally reluctantly, this was a Sci-Fi, reluctantly go, "Fine, give it to him." And then I basically made the film that kind of Jake and I were hoping it could be, probably with a little less budget than we had kind of originally hoped, but it was still, uh, we still were going after that. Let's make the most biggest, epic, crazy kind of film
Yeah.
possible. Thunder 11 had written the original draft script before I came on, and then we did a polish on it, and
Mhm.
kind of inserted some of the stuff that we originally wanted to do with it. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah. So you got the job at this point, and you're on set, you're shooting or editing, whatever. What was the most challenging part of actually making the film?
It's just that we were trying to make a $200 million movie for less than $1 million, and that's always the challenge. But
Yeah.
we wanted to show it could be done, and part of my background with makeup effects and stuff is that I knew a little bit about visual effects, but I also wanted to do a lot of tactile things. And I said, let's build a set in a swimming pool and flood it for the house scene.
Yep.
And we did that, and that was it was we were filming, like, I think January, February. It was freezing cold, and we were promised that the water that we flooded it with would be warm, which it wasn't, and the actors froze themselves. And I had a dumbwaiter on, so I was a little bit protected, but that was very hard, because you're kind of chewing gum and duct taping something together that if you had studio money, you'd be doing it in a sound stage. It would be warm, and but I think that's part of the charm. I think the movie's a little scrappy, and that we get someone said it's a movie that doesn't know it can't do that, and I think that's what's the charm of Sharknado is.
Yeah, that's a perfect,
Um,
honestly.
but it was just, we had 18 days to make this movie, and I was all in every day trying to make, like, this thing as epic and cool and crazy and fun as possible.
Mhm.
And I think because at the time Sci-Fi was getting rid of a lot of their original movies, that division was winding down. No one was kind of paying attention to us, and they put the movie on in the dead of summer, I think on a Wednesday or Thursday night, not on a normal Saturday, and it just kind of blew up. I think it was partially because of the title and the actors that we had in it. A lot of them had never been in a Sci-Fi Channel movie, like Ian or Tara or John Hurd.
Mhm.
And it's just this silly, fun, ridiculous, crazy little movie, and I'm forever grateful for it. And we got to make 6 of them. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that was, you kind of touched on a little bit, but with the charm of the Sharknado, I think there's four main things with Sharknado that when people think of Sharknado, it's the sharks in the tornado, it's the chainsaws, it's the amazing puns, and it's the celebrity guest star cameos. So my question about that is like, how do you get someone like a David Hasselhoff or a Bo Derek or a Mark Cuban? How did you get them onto your film? And did you write the scripts for the movies or start working on the films not knowing who was going to be, you know, who that was
I
going to
mean,
be? Like, did you write the script around the celebrities, or did the celebrities come first? Or
the first movie, I think the celebrities were the celebrities that were the stars of the movie. I
yeah,
mean, they were there wasn't a lot of there wasn't really cameos in the first film at all.
yeah,
It was, you know, your celebrities were Ian and Tara and John Hurd and Jason Simmons and Robbie Rist. I mean, the people that are the key actors that are in the movie.
yeah,
On the second movie, because we were in New York and it was kind of getting bigger, and you know, we wanted to really pump up things. You know, we had Mike Fenton, who was one of our casting directors on it. So I mean, he's a big guy. He's done a ton of amazing films. It was really great sitting down and talking with him. And he was like, "Oh, we're gonna get some really cool people." And it was more about, okay, here's a script and here's what we have and who we're gonna plug into this. And then there's a kind of a couple nods, like Judd Hirsch. We was going to be in the film, and we go, well, let's make him a taxi cab driver. And so it was, and we never really played any nod to his role on that TV show Taxi, except for the fact that he wrote it. But the second thing was, we were doing the opening of the movie on the plane, which is the plane kind of like it's the homage to this is Sharknado 2 for to Nightmare 25,000 Feet, the Twilight Zone episode with the gremlin on the wing, but it would be sharks, and Finn would be on the plane, the sharks would attack. And so the first thing was, we must get William Shatner to be the pilot, and that didn't work out. And I was like, well, what about John Lithgow? You know, and then that didn't work out. And then we were in New York, I was watching Airplane with my family while we were getting, you know, it was like 2 or 3 weeks before we were about ready to shoot. And my wife goes, you should get Robert Hayes because of Airplane. And I remember calling one of the producers up, and he goes, "Ah, no, it'll make the movie too jokey." He's like, "No, we must get Robert Hayes." And he goes, "As long as you don't make any airplane jokes." Of course, you know, you're crossing your fingers, and yeah, of course we're not going to. But then we kind of made a couple nods to the franchise in there. But that was kind of that movie was kind of the first step into really hiring people that had something tied to what was going on in the movie.
mhm,
So I think it was more even balanced in terms of we got a lot of cameos that we just had people playing, specific roles as opposed to what they are known for. But that was where I think that everything shifted, and then you get to this third movie, and it's like, okay, who can we get, and then we will readjust the role to who they are.
yeah,
Obviously, Hasselhoff, never went into space in a movie. I don't think. Probably something that I'm not aware of, but it was just he just was the greatest person we can get to play Finn's dad, who was a former surfer. I mean, it just made sense.
yeah,
Bo Derek was just someone who made sense to be Tara Reid. For the president, you know, we knew we needed to have someone cool. Mark Cuban turned out to be great, but we would everything with everybody that was ever in these movies moving forward. We would find out like the night before or 2 days before, and we would be rewriting the script for that actor,
mhm,
whether to make references to things they've done in the past or to play to their strengths. And that's kind of how it went from there. I mean, there were times where we would get, especially on the later movies, we literally the night before, oh, we have this person, and I'd be up late writing something for them, or one of the writers would be up writing something for them, and then on set we would be improvising or coming up with things. So
mhm,
it was pretty wild. Even on two, there was we got Richard Kind to play somebody, and we needed something for him to do. And Thunder, I think, had went to sleep that night, and it was like a midnight, and the night before we're gonna go shoot. And so I was busy prepping, and I talked to a buddy of mine in LA and say, "Hey, I just need a sketch of something. This is the idea I'm thinking of." So he wrote something, and then I took it and then did another polish over that. And then the next morning we were doing all of the scenes. So it was just crazy how fast we were moving,
yeah.
where literally like 6 hours before there was nothing on a page, and then we had this whole little tiny mini arc for Richard Kind, and we were shooting it. So
Yeah.
But there was a lot of improv once we started hiring people on the fly, especially people that were comedians, where you could just kind of go crazy. So you'd shoot stuff that's scripted, and then you would add stuff. And there was also stuff in the last two movies where, because you're bringing someone in, we would shoot like 15 pages sometimes, 10 to 15 pages with one character, knowing that in the movie it'd probably be, no more than 2 minutes, on screen.
Mhm.
That's why the latter films, the first cuts that we got in were like 2.5 hours long because of all the cameo material.
Mhm.
But I think that's what made the latter ones interesting, is because we would cut it down to, like, we have all this great stuff and you just kind of massage it and pick the best bits and the best
Yeah.
pieces.
Yeah. I would watch a 2.5 hour Sharknado movie just for the record. I would
No,
watch
no,
that.
no, no, no. The funny part about it all is we would always do a special edition for home entertainment for Blu-ray and stuff,
Mhm.
and we do. I wouldn't necessarily say a director's cut, but an extended version of them. And one of the producers would always go, "Anthony, we're going to do this. You are going to put stuff back in, aren't you?" Because sometimes I would trim and do little adjustments, but I don't want to put things in just to put things in the film, just because we have an extended cut. It has to be good. And then usually there was a line or a moment or something that was worth putting back in and restoring. But there's a lot of stuff that just should never see the light of day because it just fell flat, didn't work.
Yeah.
That's what happened when we did the 10th anniversary of Sharknado. We'd never done a special edition of it, and so I went back and watched the original cuts of the movie to try to see what the intent was, because you only have so many visual effects. And so it's like, okay, all right. Oh yeah, I remember that we wanted to have the captain fall into the water. We shot this plate, and then he gets sucked up into a tornado as opposed to getting attacked, just in the funnel of it.
Mhm.
And so, in restoring things, we restored things that was the original intent all along, not just hey, let's just create a brand new scene to put in a 2013
Yeah.
film. And so there's the remastered version I'm really proud of, just because it's kind of weirdly got to finish the film in a strange way, even though you go, okay, well, you're gonna do the Star Wars George Lucas thing and completely piss people off, but look, I think we made in our case, I think we can make the movie a little bit better, and I think that's what we did.
Yeah, I got a chance to catch the re-release and it was awesome. So thank you for putting it out in theaters so I could get to experience that.
Yeah,
So
it's a little bit of a Mandela effect too now. Like, people that are used to probably the first movie, and then they watch it going, but wait a minute, wasn't those roller skaters in that stock shot doing this? But it looks almost identically the same. I
no,
mean,
yeah,
there
that's
was
yeah. We
there
I
was
mean,
so
my
many
family have seen them so many times that we were watching. We were like, that's a little bit different. The shark looks a tiny bit different in that one shot, like because we've seen them again over and over for like 10 years now.
Yeah, our biggest problem is going up to 4K is that some of our stock shots of like the city and all that stuff, it was like 1080p or something. And so in some cases we had to go and replace stock shots
Mhm.
with different 4K stock shots. And that was actually one of the hardest things. And I had to go and scour, try. I didn't want to it not feel like it was so radically different. And so that whole montage with the credits is like 70-80% of people on the beach and stuff that was all stock.
Mhm.
And so I had to go and spend days trying to find things that were almost identical.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it has that sort of Mandela effect. It's like there's something off here. I just don't quite know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so we talked a bit about the planning for the films a minute ago, and so I remember at the end of Sharknado 3, and we could talk about because the movie's been out for several years now. At the end of Sharknado 3, it ends on a big cliffhanger with what's going to happen to April, right? And I remember when the movie came out, there was a Facebook, I think it was Facebook, there was like a Facebook voting thing where you could vote whether or not she was going to live or die. And
Twitter.
I voted for her to live, and ultimately we know what ends up happening to her. So my question to you is what would have happened if the voting went the other direction? Like, was that always the plan that, like, oh, we're gonna kind of kill her off and then bring her back as a robot, or was there a different plan for if the voting went the other direction?
The That was all sci-fi wanting to do the thing, and I think that it was great marketing.
Mm.
Um, I think that there was when you have your lead characters in a movie, and if you're fans, you don't want to see your lead character not come back for another movie, and unless you really hate pulling something where you're going, hey, I'm just going to do this to screw with them. I think there was always a confidence that she was going to come back, and honestly, if if the votes were she was going to die, I still would have fought for her to be in the film. I honestly think the way we went, I don't think it would have mattered one way or another because we found a way to bring her back in
Mhm.
this sort of androidish weird
Yeah.
way. I mean, it was just so yeah. I would have been the first. I've always been very pro my cast being in all these movies. You know, there was a time at the just a brief millisecond on the second movie because normally with sequels on these movies, especially at sci-fi, they don't like bringing back the cast, and so there was a talk of just having a brand new family, and I was like, no, you know, the part of the charm of Sharknado is our leads and our cast,
Mhm.
and you know, and you can kind of see that love throughout because you know, even with Nova not appearing in the second movie, we brought her back in the third, and you know, she pops back in the fifth and the sixth movie, and there's sort of it's very rare for a director to create a franchise and then finish it off with the same actors.
Yeah.
Because usually by like the fifth or sixth movie, oh, Eric Estrada is now Ian Ziering, you know, is doing his role, you know, and that was a gift because I was there sort of making sure that the gatekeeper for the characters. Every time someone would go, well, no, Finn's gonna do this and that. Like, no, he wouldn't do that. And I would be very I'd fight for these character beats and knowing the film, you know, I would be able to kind of sneak in these things that you know progressed the characters. I think six is as ridiculous and crazy and fully aware that it's a comedy as opposed to the other movies because the sixth movie just embraces the craziness on a different level. There are two or three really amazing dramatic scenes in that movie that is kind of a payoff and catharsis for everything that happened before. The one where Nova calls out Finn, where she wants to try to change things for her past, and then she calls Finn out on his bullshit. And both Cassie and Ian did such a great job in that scene. And then there's a scene with Ian talking about like you know he's gonna lose the chance to if he resets time, his son will never exist. And he has this thing of like I'd do anything. I'd even just stay here in the past just so I can live out my days with my son. So I mean, for the silliness, there was still an anchor with these characters that I think gets lost by some people not realizing that that's why not you had the silliness of the title and the ridiculousness of the set pieces and all that stuff and the sharks, but you followed this family for six movies,
Yeah.
and I think that's a big part of the charm and the longevity.
Yeah, 100%. So, you know, and talking about the sixth one, you know, the first one came out. What did you have any idea that it was going to explode the way it did and turn into, you know, a six-movie franchise? Did you know that? Did you have any ideas of what could happen in a sequel, and then why stop at six? Like, why not keep
Uh,
going?
let's see. So John Hurd knew. I don't understand how he knew, but he was the only one on set that kind of said there's something about this movie. And you do these low budget movies, and you know that it's a crapshoot. You're lucky if maybe it breaks through and has a nice little cult audience with the genre fans. Um, but it's you just go and you make the best movie and hope someone finds it. But John Hurt had a sense there was something special, and Jake and I knew with the title, we were tickled by that title when we came up with it, and we knew there was something special about the title. But whether anybody else is going to embrace that, you don't know. But there was a moment when I was watching the movie with a couple people to QC it, which is to watch it through with all the visual effects in. So it was like I think three of us in an edit bay, which because up until that point, there were probably I think over 100 visual effect shots in the movie. So most of the time I was watching the movie didn't have sharks in a lot of it. And so we're watching it for the first time with all the stuff in finally with the final mix, and we were having a blast, and having fun with the movie, making fun of the movie, and after it was over, and I've said this many times, I said two things. I said maybe in 5 years this will be a cult movie because it's just such a blast, and I think we made probably the greatest stoner movie ever made. And then the movie came out and was like an instant cult classic, and it's you just never know with these things. And I think again it's part of the charm. It's a TV movie that became a theatrical movie. that kind of was more popular than a lot of films that came out in theaters because it just was fun. And we dared people to watch it because a lot of times these movies don't deliver. You see a trailer and there'll be, maybe five of the effects in it that you see, and that's it. But this movie is like wall to wall craziness. And that was actually the biggest thing when I was doing the special edition. I was looking at it going, I mean, it doesn't stop. It's just non-stop things happening.
Yeah.
It's like every 5 minutes. I was actually timing it at some point, and that was just by sheer willing it into existence. Like we just didn't let up on it. And grateful to the producers and Sci-Fi for just like letting me mess around and giving me the rope to hang myself with, because it could have went south and I could have never done another movie after this. But if I was going to end my career in Sharknado, at least go down with the sharks, and just go crazy and just embrace it. But in terms of, I think I was joking because I never think about there's always seeding things if you want to, thinking, okay, well, what would happen in the sequel? But I think while we were finishing it up, I was joking if there was a sequel, it should be called Sharknadosaurus, and then Tornado's so powerful they sent him back in time to prehistoric times. It was just a joke. And then it blew up, and suddenly the reality of the sequel happened. And it just was like, okay, well, we're going to do New York. And then I think after that it would be we were making the movie, and then and then suddenly we'd have ideas for the next film. So it's like, well, if we get a third one, we'll do White House Down with Sharks. And of course, that's kind of what we did. And then eventually did Prehistoric in number 6. But we knew that it was going to end with the 6th movie, when we were making the 5th movie. We kind of knew that was it, and Sci-Fi was kind of saying that's going to be it. So that was actually a great opportunity for us with the 5th movie to kind of set up the 6th movie. You don't normally get that luxury of knowing what's going into it. So we knew everything was going to go to shit, and he was going to be the last man on Earth, and then we were going to do time travel in the 6th movie. So there's a nice through line. So and also I knew when we were doing the 4th movie, kind of where I wanted the last scene of the last movie to be, which was in the bar that we started off with in the first movie. And so I didn't know exactly all the specifics, but I knew that I wanted it to kind of end there. And it was just, it was cool that we got to do all those things. So we got to actually go back to that bar. We got to do a lot of fun things. The 6th movie, we got to pay off. What does that boat in Mexico have to do with Sharknado? And so we were able to bring back Israel, who played Santiago on that, and have him with Ian shooting at sharks. So there's a lot of fun stuff. Like I said, this getting to do the films, it was like a bucket list thing, and it's something that never happens. And I think that was also when you listen to the last line of Sharknado, that's I wrote that thing for Al Roker for the Tay Show to say, and he's on the screen as they're walking out of the bar, and he goes, I think it's something to the effect of, it's sunny skies everywhere, it's 73 degrees across the country, it's an anomaly. So take the family out, enjoy things. It's never going to happen again. Something to that effect. And that's me basically saying, look, this will never happen. Something where a film franchise pops out of nowhere on a network and takes Twitter by storm and is all fan driven, because that first movie was fan driven. It had nothing to do with the marketing. I mean, there was a little bit of it, but it wasn't. We did a lot of it after one, but the fans found us, and we never forgot that. And these movies were always made with them in the back of our minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I babble a lot. Sorry, I talk.
No, it's great. I mean, that's awesome. I tell you, like, it was when the boat shows up again in the 6th one. To everyone, because we used to watch all of them with, like, my parents and my sister and grandparents, like jaws on the ground, because that was the thing we talked about since the first one, was like, what was that boat? Why is it there? And then it comes back.
Well, look, to be honest, the boat thing, in the original script, it was a boat off the coast of Mexico is fishing Sharknado hits, everybody dies. That was kind of what was it was like a quarter of a page. There was nothing to it, and low budget. You can't go to a boat and shoot a quarter of a page. So I go, well, let's make it a teaser. Let's make it something really cool. And it's, Mexico is getting close to California, so why not? So I go, it would be kind of fun to do this sort of drug bust go wrong, but it's shark fins on a
Yeah.
boat and make this big kind of cool opening action sequence. So it was kind of a chance to do something that a little different, leading you in so you could kind of go, okay, so stuff's happening in the movie.
Yeah.
And
So
then of course we retconned it and said, but we planned it all along in number six.
yeah. So real quick sidebar about the Sharknado franchise. I want to talk about your musical abilities. I see the guitar in the corner. You of course wrote a lot of the songs for the series with Robbie Rist. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that. Like how did tell us about how you were able to work your musical side into your film side a little bit.
It kind of started in my first couple of movies is that we couldn't afford to license good music. I've known Robbie forever, and Robbie's an amazing musician. And a couple of my short films, he said, just come over and we'll write something and we'll drop it into to the short. And then we got to Boo, and I needed some things, and so I would try to find library stuff, and it just was awful. And so just come over, we'll just do a blues song, or we'll do this. And we tried to license some stuff for my second movie, and it was the same thing. I was trying to find some old gospel-y spiritual songs because of that was kind of the style of Headless Horseman, and
Mm.
we couldn't figure out the rights because it got muddied once people added music to it or other lyrics to it in the 40s and 50s. So it wasn't clear that it was usable. And then I also wanted to use Season of the Witch by Donovan, and we got a hold of Donovan, and he gave us permission to do a cover, and it would cost the production like 15 grand, and they didn't want to spend that money on it.
Mm.
So then it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll just write stuff. And then after that, we just started writing things for the movies that I did. And it was kind of like a musical because, we would know kind of the style we wanted, but all the songs kind of, if you really listen to them, they all kind of pertain to what's going on in any of
Yeah.
the films that they're in. And so Sharknado comes along, and I tell Robbie, I want to do a rock opera, like Bohemian Rhapsody. And so, and I go, let's the first part of it, it'd be what if the Ramones were still alive? What kind of song would they write for Sharknado? Because one of my favorite songs is for a movie is Pet Cemetery by the Ramones.
Mhm.
I don't want to be buried in Pet Cemetery. I don't want to live my life again. It's brilliant. And so it's like we sat down, and I think in 15 minutes we had this song for Sharknado. It just came out of the ether. I remember it's like, well, we need, Robbie goes, I need a bridge. I go, well, maybe we just start naming off shark stuff. He goes, I'll be back in 15 minutes. And I started scribbling down, Hammerhead's one scary guy, Mako's gonna make you cry, Thresher bites, bye, bye, bye. I mean, it was total ridiculousness. And we recorded it as sort of like the first part of this rock opera. And then after it was over, it's like, we're not doing a rock opera. This is just too cool. It also has one of the most ridiculous lyrics, and probably my favorite lyric in anything we've done, just because it's so dumb. And it's bombs are going to explode, plode. And
Yep.
I love that. And then after the success of everything, we kept talking about what we're going to try. We still needed to figure out this rock opera, but we already made the perfect Sharknado song.
Mm.
And so I think the second movie I had come up with just a man with a chainsaw in his hand, come to take stand for me and you, but I still couldn't figure it out. And then we kind of avoided it on the third movie. And the fourth movie, I go, we're going to write Sharknado Rhapsody.
Mhm.
And I figured out what the chorus was because they kept getting hung up on Sharknado having to be in the title. And that was the mistake. And so the title, the lyric I came up with was Armageddon, come and get it. The world ain't going to end unless I say so.
Mhm.
And so that became the basis of that Sharknado Rhapsody song. But we had like 5 or 6 songs per movie almost for a while there. I think the only one we had 3 or 4 in the fifth movie. But we would kind of temp stuff in, and then I'd go over to Robbie's in the middle of post production, and we would just go, okay, this is the template for what we need to do, and then we just sit down and just crank the stuff out. Robbie understands the math of music. He's also an amazing producer and musician. So, a lot of that stuff is him just, making it sound amazing. And then we would hire a mixer to come in and do it. And we would trade off on vocals and stuff.
Yeah.
We have a catalog now with all the films I've done, I think of about 75 songs. So
Nice.
our goal is 100.
You're getting there.
But it's fun. The music side of it, that was always the release on making the movies, because it was, whether they used the songs or didn't use the songs, we at least got to be creative and do things that were for us. So
now this is a really random question, but I need to know the answer to this. What is Petunia? Who is Petunia? What is this possum? Who is this?
See, this is the thing, is that I get hung up on weird tangential things, and then they just kind of take a life of its own. Petunia was in the line producer on the movie. Devin Ward had line produced a film prior to this where they had to rent this stuffed possum, and they destroyed it, and so they had to buy it. And so Petunia, they named her Petunia, and she was hanging around the office. And I kind of fell in love with Petunia, and so I go, well, you know what? Let's our code name for the movie should be Petunia. And so I think that was, we'd see, like, the signs that say Petunia, for the crews to find the location and stuff. And then I go, well, she's not only our UPM and our mascot, she needs to be in the film.
Mhm.
And I'm fully aware that if you put something in as an in joke and you make it easy to cut, it's going to get cut. So I put Petunia in a place where you couldn't cut her from the movie, which was an actual moving dolly shot. And so you see her in the hardware store, and you start on her face, and you kind of come over, and it lands on Jason Simmons. And so that was kind of the beginning of Petunia's appearance in the film. And again, it's just one of those silly things you put in there, and then it's like, well, she has to be in two. And then it became, she was in all six of the movies. If you actually pay attention to some of the main title sequences, she pops up there. I wrote the Archie versus Sharknado comic. She pops up there, and Japan is huge Sharknado fans, like huge. It's absolutely crazy how huge they are, and they've embraced the power of Petunia. And I think at one of the screenings they made postcards of Petunia and stuff. It was awesome and crazy. And yeah, there was a thing where at one point I I was pitching this, which it would have been impossible to do for the sixth movie, but I wanted to pay off Petunia to kind of be like Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy, where Petunia was the guide in time travel.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. But she is there by the flux capacitor at the end of the fifth movie. Yeah. So Petunia. But it was actually the other thing too is for the sixth movie, it was fifth and sixth movie, but the fifth movie in particular, we didn't know if we would be able to put Petunia in the movie because we couldn't bring her overseas where we shot most of the film. Mm-hmm. And so if we brought her over, it's like, you can't bring a stuffed possum on a plane or anything like that. If there's laws or something against that. No. So the graphic artist actually did Petunia kind of beer poster that's in one of the scenes in 5. So that was my backup if we couldn't get her in the movie. And so we shot the flux capacitor scene in LA, and that's when I snuck Petunia in. So it's one of many little in jokes that pop up into these movies, that just gags that kind of take a life on its own. In the fourth movie with Maciela Lucia, there was this, she pops up as I forget, she's cousin or some. I think she's cousin to Ian or something, and I kept telling Sci-Fi, well, she's part of the Sharknado Sisterhood. That's where she was sent there by Nova, mm-hmm. And they're going, no Sharknado Sisterhood. It's like, okay, but in my head, she was part of the Sharknado Sisterhood, and so when we get to the fifth movie, you go, can we make the Sharknado Sisterhood a thing? And they're going, okay, fine. So even though it was sort of a layered in joke in the fourth movie where it's there but it's not there, it gets paid off. So there's always like latching onto something and then just kind of, running into the ground or paying it off in some way.
Mhm.
So,
Well, after Sharknado ended, you've been doing, you're keeping busy. You've done a bunch of different movies in a bunch of different genres, ton of different projects. I mean, what's next and what's attracting you to the projects that you end up doing?
I mean, I think I've been fortunate in the last few years to get to do a wide variety of things. I mean, I'm a horror guy and I love horror. I got to do a couple interesting thrillers. I got to do two back-to-back westerns, Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch and Butch versus Sundance, which was an amazing experience. And the cast we had in that was just fantastic. And those are available on Tubi. Um, did a personal horror movie called Nix, which I'm really, really proud of that we did independently a couple years ago. And it was the whole point of it was like, let's make a horror movie about something. It's a movie about trauma and addiction and kind of the monsters we create. And it's such a weird, odd movie. And I knew horror fans would absolutely hate it, but I knew that anybody that understood what we were trying to say and do with that, it would resonate. And that was pretty much correct. And in terms of selling something like that, we had a monster in it, and you have a title, and it works. And so the movie worked and sold and did really well for that purpose. But as I told the producers I was working with on it, let's just make something for us. And that one I'm really proud of. I hope more people discover and find it because it's such an interesting and odd little movie, and it's doing a lot of things that you don't do in these movies normally.
Yeah.
And it's just layered. But yeah, I got to work with Dee Wallace on that. I wrote that role for her, and she did a phenomenal job. I
Mhm.
think it's an incredible performance, one of her best.
So, yeah, what kind of tips do you have for aspiring filmmakers, people trying to get into the filmmaking field?
Understand that film is an illusion, and what just happened here, light just suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and
Yep.
that's the beauty of editing.
Mhm.
Um, Look, there's no right or wrong way of getting into the business. Everybody's path is different, and you have to learn everything. Be voracious in watching good and bad movies. Be voracious in learning what every department does. Understand what you want to do. Make sure that you're writing stories or telling stories that you want to tell, that you care about.
Mhm.
And it's a team effort. I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of the actors over and over again, and a lot of crew over and over again, because these things kind of become about family at times. And you can continue to learn uh, as a filmmaker. You're always going to be your own worst critic, and you're always going to go, I wish I did that, or I wish I did that. And so as long as you're learning, that's all that matters. And the business is changing rapidly, and it's becoming easier sometimes and harder sometimes to make films to get out there because everybody can do it.
Mhm.
And so what's going to stand out is what you bring to it. What is your personal view of things? Are you quirky, or are you more into writing about characters and drama? Find your voice.
Mhm.
I feel like, the stuff that I'm into, I have a wide variety of interests, and I've always had. I like comedy, I like horror, I like good stories. Some people just like one thing, so it depends on what it is. Um, but don't give up, and it's not going to be, sometimes it's overnight, sometimes it isn't. It took me a long time to get to a point where I was directing my first movie. I was a journalist, I was a crew person for many, many years, but eventually I got a chance. And with the success of Sharknado, I get to continue to make interesting, crazy little films. So I did a film last year in Mexico called Blind Waters, which is another. It was more of a serious shark film. And I said the only reason I would do it is if we actually went to Mexico or went to the ocean and shot for real in the ocean, and we dived and did all this stuff for real. And so I got certified to dive, and I never dived before. And that's what made that a challenge and something interesting for me. Instead of just doing the same thing, it was a chance to do something that I had never done before.
Yeah.
So you're just know you're always learning, and never think that you know everything, because you don't. I've never done this, so we got to breaking over with a car clamp. That's a new thing for me, or whatever. And it's a gift to be able to be creative. So always remember that. It's a hard business, and it's getting harder with a lot of these other tools and technology. Like music and stuff. Making money at this stuff and making profit and stuff. It's harder and harder unless you're at a studio level. But even then, they claim they're not making money. So
Mhm.
you have to care about this, and you have to want to do it because it's a hard business, but the rewards are fantastic. And at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're paying it forward. I mean, I could tell that you love films, and I loved films growing up. And so a lot of the movies that inspired me or made me feel happy or scared or whatever, now, I can put things out there, and hopefully maybe, you have that effect on one person. Sharknado was one of those things that make a lot of people happy. Nix has a message. If there's 5 people that get the message out of Nix, that's a win. If no one else saw it, and those 5 people, it got them through something, then you have a home run. So
Yeah.
that's the advice. Always learn, never give up, and always have a day job that you can get paid for while you're trying to make your dreams happen.
Yeah, and then we have one last question. This is how we end our interviews with all our guests. Is
Mhm.
what are some of your favorite movies?
uh, the obvious stuff, like John Carpenter, I love, and The Thing. You can't throw you go throw a dart at any horror fan, and The Thing is going to be high up there. Big fan of a lot of the 1940s, 50s Val Lewton movies, the Cat People, Leopard Man, I Walk with a Zombie. I mean, those things, just in terms of style and suspense and stuff, is unparalleled. Those are fantastic. Now you just lost your light.
I like this one out. Yeah.
um, there's another film that I was talking to someone about recently. Actually, some actors. I was telling them it's just a great character film. It's from '87, and it's called Broadcast News with Holly Hunter and William Hurt and Albert Brooks. And I watched it a couple years ago, and I'm like, this is just it's so good and so well written, and it's a good lesson in characters and shades of gray for characters.
Yeah.
So um, Cronenberg's great. Videodrome is ahead of its time film. Spielberg, some incredible movies. Jaws and Raiders of the Lost Ark are up there as probably 2 perfect movies. The perfect movie is few and far between, but those movies are flawless.
Yeah. Those are all
So
very.
yeah, I mean,
Yep.
I have a lot of things. I'm a big fan of John Sayles, as a writer and as a director. He has some really amazing movies that he's done over the years. Maybe It's You and Lone Star is a really good movie.
Mhm.
So yeah, so it's all over the map. When I was a kid writing reviews for my class paper, the local theater gave me a movie pass so I could see anything. And so every Saturday I would go to their theaters and watch everything. Some things I probably shouldn't have watched at my age, but they let me in to do it. And so, like I said, be voracious. Challenge yourself and watch things that you normally wouldn't watch, because it's you get a lot of experience understanding what works and what doesn't, and that even things that are supposed to be good for you, like prestige movies, aren't as good as maybe they are compared to like a horror movie that
Yeah.
just delivers.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and talk. This has been awesome.
You're
Uh,
welcome, Daniel.
yeah, and of course, I will be keeping a lookout for whatever you do next.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for being a Sharknado fan.
Yeah,
Chances
I'm a
are.
giant fan. So if you're tuning in next week, we'll be on same time, same place, and we will catch you in the next one. And that's a wrap.